Hey guys, Nikki here. We just purchased a brand new home, and rather than selling our previous home, we decided to turn it into a rental property. Now, I don't know about y'all, I had no idea how to be a landlord for the first time, so I wanted to walk you through everything that we did to prepare our house to be a rental from the point where we decided to list it all the way until our tenants moved in. And also, if you think content like this is helpful, please drop a like and hit subscribe. I'd love to have you stick around for my next video. So our townhouse was in an HOA community, and naturally HOA communities tend to have rules about rentals. So for our community in particular, there was really only two things that you had to do. One, you had to live in the community for at least a year prior to renting out the property. I think that's so it discourages investors from just coming in and buying up properties in there. And then basically we just had to have room on the rental list. So our neighborhood is capped at a certain percentage of rentals. The community at the time was below that amount. And so we just had to reach out to the board who put us in touch with a company that actually issues the rental permits. From there, we just needed to contact them when we actually had a signed lease. And that was really the whole process. It was actually easier than I expected. I know that in some communities, there could be like a year-long waiting list or something like that. But luckily, our community did not have a wait list at the time when we were trying to rent. So at the time where we got the rental permit, our normal monthly HOA fee was $270. We had to pay a special fee of $249. That is only for property owners that are renting out their units. I think it's because they expect more wear and tear on the community as a result of rentals. And it's just a way to help kind of boost the budget of the HOA. So not ideal, but I was fine to pay it. So the next step in the process was obviously to list the property for rent. Now, we have a real estate agent who himself owns many rental properties. I think at some point he had like 17 going on at the same time. So he clearly understands how to price things in the market, how to find good tenants and things like that. We decided to use him for finding our tenants and getting the whole listing set up. Now, this wasn't free. I wish it was, but we ended up paying him the equivalent of 1 month's rent for him procuring listing photos, getting everything listed on MLS, going through the background check process and things like that until we got to the point of a signed contract. I would highly recommend it if you're new to this space, just because I wouldn't have known exactly what to look for or what to do. So when I was first talking to friends and coworkers about putting our house up for rent, some of them were like,
why don't you just use the listing photos from when you purchased the house?
But I think the furniture that we have made our house look bigger than the original listing photos did. And so I wanted to make sure that we got fresh listing photos. So when we did our rental photos, he actually sent us a checklist in advance of what we would need to do to kind of clean up the space and have it ready. That checklist included things like obviously making sure that your house is just generally clean, but also taking everything, and I mean everything, off of all the flat surfaces in our house. He asked us to remove basically any reference of the fact that we have kids and pets, like our cat tree had to go downstairs into our garage. He asked us to take down all of our personal photos, as well as change any light bulbs that were burnt out. Y'all, I did not realize how many burnt out light bulbs that we were living with, like that we just kept forgetting to change. Some of which because they were in like hallways or stairwells and things like that. I don't know if y'all are like that too, but apparently I just don't notice when light bulbs are out. So yeah. There's also some smaller instructions like making sure your magnets are off the fridge, like things that I'm not sure that I would have thought of if I was taking those listing photos myself. Basically, it needed to look like we didn't live there. So I did all of that really about the day before our listing photos. It probably took me 4 or 5 hours, I'm being completely honest. I did it after my daughter went to bed. The day that the photographer came to do the listing photos, our agent also showed up. And even though I had spent all that time, he still like tore our house apart, like hid so many things that I didn't even think about taking down. He moved a lot of furniture out. So like, for example, in our daughter's bedroom, I was using that room kind of as an office, as well as kind of a guest bedroom and a nursery. So he took my entire desk setup and moved it into the hallway for while they were doing pictures in that room. He took furniture out of our master bedroom. He took things out of the different living spaces and just kind of like hid it off camera or like in a bathroom or something. And it was a little crazy and stressful in the moment, but I have to hand it to him. I think the pictures turned out really nice. I'll drop some of them here. And you would never know that we had more furniture just like chilling in the hallway. So I'm happy with how they turned out. So the next step was to actually post the listing onto MLS. And part of the reason why we went through our agent is so that it would go on MLS, which then would cascade the listing to all of the other sites that people tend to look on. Think of places like Zillow, Redfin, Realtor.com, HotPads, like anywhere where you would normally look for a rental. It just covers all of your bases. He took care of writing up the description. So some things that are typically in listings are you walking distance from parks? Key features of your home, like do you have coffered ceilings? Do you have stainless steel appliances? Do you have like Nest thermostats, things like that? Also, are you near any major landmarks? So think things like highways or big entertainment areas or shopping districts. And then also we noted the move-in date that we were comfortable with. Now, he wrote everything up for us. I would definitely suggest that you still double check, read through everything that they write, and also through the basic information on the listing. So our house actually pulled in the square footage incorrectly at first. It was about 2,800 square feet, but the original listing actually had it listed as like 2,100 square feet. Not sure where that came from, but we got it corrected. And I'm really glad that we paid attention and caught it like as soon as the listing went online, because it's obviously a big difference. So our agent fielded all of the communication with people that inquired about the property. He also ran background checks for us. And with the renters that we went with, they were some of the first people to reach out to us, some of the first people to try to tour the property. They submitted a background check immediately, which proved that their income was plenty sufficient to pay rent, and also that they didn't have things like criminal history. It was really helpful to give us some peace of mind. And also because our agent was talking to their agent, because these people were going through an agent, we felt really comfortable with their seriousness as renters and that they weren't gonna like trash the place, which is always comforting, especially as a first-time landlord. So our agent also provided an example lease agreement for us. It's the same agreement that I think he uses for his properties, and it covered things that I never would have even thought about. Like one thing we were worried about is like, oh, do we need to provide things like pest control or like changing air filters and things like that? And we saw in the lease agreement that he had already said like all of that stuff is the tenant's responsibility. And so we could have like gone back and forth with them if they weren't okay with that, but it just immediately kind of took those concerns away for us, and as well as other maintenance things that we hadn't even thought about. That lease agreement also had some provisions for like automatic escalation of rent for the next lease term if they renew. So for ours specifically, their rent is going to go up by a minimum of 3% next year. We can choose to raise it more than that, but that's something that they can go ahead and expect based on the existing agreement that we have. We also have things in there about when rent is due, what the late fees are, and all of that, so that if we ever run into an issue, we can reference that kind of airtight contract that he's used dozens of times. So once we went through and had a signed lease agreement with our tenants, I went ahead and called our insurance company and had them update our policy from like a homeowner's insurance policy for like someone that's living in the home to a rental policy. The premium wasn't very different, but it is a different policy just to make sure we're covering the right things. We also then had to go through and make the house rental ready from like an aesthetics and maintenance perspective. So for weeks on end, I would be going over in the evenings, doing touch-up paint, doing minor repairs. So things like our trash can drawer decided to break like 2 days before we moved out. Like, I don't know what happened. It actually kind of fixed itself, which was lucky, but there were some other things we needed to address, like door handles that were a little wiggly from our daughter learning how to open doors. So we tightened those up. We had to remove all of the child locks. We did things like changing out the air filters. So there was just a lot of small things to address. None of them were super difficult, but it does take some time, especially when like you're not living there and you can't just do it all in the moment. You have to like drive to and from. So that's just something to make sure that you plan for, unless you're able to do all of that stuff before you move out. We just weren't able to in our case. There was two things that I had to call a handyman to do repairs for. One was we had a shaky stair railing, and I just get nervous with hanging anything that big and heavy on a wall. So I had him deal with that because I know he would do it in like 5 minutes. And then we also, for the entire time that we lived there, the sink stopper on my sink in the master bath never worked. We can never get it to hook right. So it turns out that there was a broken part. So he ran out to Home Depot, grabbed it, fixed it in like 2 minutes, and we were good to go. I think all in all, it cost us about $80 for those repairs. Not ideal, but I was fine to pay it because again, that stuff would have taken me a lot longer to figure out and do correctly. And the rest we just did ourselves, like the touch-up paint and all that, filling in holes, all that stuff was kind of a non-issue for me. think Calvin came to say hi.
Hi, buddy.
So at the time of signing the lease, we did require the tenants to go ahead and submit their security deposit, but they did not have to submit their first month's rent. So about a week before the lease started, I sent the renters some reminders about utilities to make sure that they set up things like water service, power service, gas, and I also just reminded them of who the best internet cable provider was based on internet speed. And at that same time, I said, hey, I'm gonna send you an invoice for the first month's rent. Please make sure to pay it before I give you a walkthrough of the property. That way we're squared away. And at that time, I also scheduled a walkthrough with them for the day before they moved in. We hired our house cleaner to do a full deep clean of the entire house. We trust her, we use her all the time. I've done a separate video all about why I think house cleaners are worth it, and I will link that up here. We had her deep clean the appliances as well, which is helpful, and that included our washing machine. We really wanted to just address anything that we thought they could possibly be bothered by, and I think we did a pretty good job of that. The walkthrough day was actually the first time I had ever met them in person. So we met and I basically walked through the whole house with them. We made sure to walk through any of the apps that they could use for their house. Like there is an app that pairs with our garage door. So I wanted to make sure they knew what that was. Wanted to make sure they understood the doorbell camera and the smart thermostat that we have. I walked through the key HOA rules that they might want to know about. Parking is really the only thing that our HOA cared about. So made sure they knew that. I let them know where I left some spare light bulbs and what those light bulbs were for. So really anything that just gets them oriented to the house so that they know that they're going to be taken care of. We also gave them keys at that point. And also because their agent came to the walkthrough, she also had us all sign something that basically said the house was fine, which in hindsight, I wish I had done for myself, but I'm glad that she had a copy. That way, if there was any damage later on, we would have something to reference that said hey, this damage did not exist when you moved in. That's something that I would do next time I'm setting up a property for renters. So that's everything that we did to get our house move-in ready. Our renters moved in a few weeks ago. Everything's gone really well. We did have to call a plumber for one issue. Besides that, everything's been pretty smooth, and we'll see how it goes the next, obviously, year as they live there, but so far so good. And to give you an idea of the financial side of it, so right now the all-in payment that we make on our townhouse every month, including mortgage, taxes, HOA, all that good stuff, is around $2,650, and our rent is $3,500 a month. So we're making a pretty healthy profit on that. We are technically in the hole right now because we did pay the $3,500 to our agent to find renters. And then we also did some of those repairs, we paid that handyman $80 to fix something. I had to pay a plumber recently to come in to fix a minor issue as well. But we're very quickly gonna make that up. Now, I also wanted to just note that we're not taking all of that out as profit outright. Back when we were first purchasing a house, I heard that you should set aside 1% of your home's purchase price per year for repairs. And so I calculated out what that looked like and then divided it by 12. It's $360 a month. So of that profit, I'm taking out $360, setting it aside and just saying that's my slush fund for anything that happens with the house, building up a savings for the next time we have to find a tenant or for those repairs that I mentioned. And then we're taking the rest of that profit and putting it towards our current mortgage. So we're hoping that'll be sustainable, but if we need to adjust those numbers later on, we will. We just are still new to this, so we're not entirely sure where it'll go. I'm also planning to talk to the person that does our taxes this year to figure out if I need to set this up as a separate business, as an LLC or anything like that, or if it's easier to just run all of that business money some other way. TBD, we'll keep you guys posted on how that conversation goes. But yeah, that's really it. It was an easier process than I expected in a lot of ways, but it was still very stressful because we've never done it before. So I hope this eases your mind if you are also trying to rent out a house that you own. I know that you can do it, and I know that it'll be a great source of income if you're able to put yourself in a similar position to us. So best of luck if you're doing the same, and please remember to like and subscribe if you found this video helpful. If you want to hear all about our new house, I'm gonna link 2 videos here about why we chose this house and also our renovations process because I thought it was really fun. So I will see you next time.